Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait just a minute or two, and then we're going to talk to Annie, and she's going to tell us all the stuff.
Yay!
So are you building something specific there? It looks like you have directions.
Yeah, I am doing, Lego did a Star Wars Christmas diorama. Oh, my ring light.
Wow, you got Toot's attention over here with that.
I actually specifically saved up. I was like, oh, I am getting that. I am not missing out on that. So I'm building Leia right now. I guess it's not historically accurate or original trilogy accurate. Oh, it has Finn. Oh, this is Rey. I thought this was Leia, but this is Rey. That explains the different hair. So that's what I'm doing. I saved it just for me. I got the kids' other stuff, and I was like, oh, no, that's mine. You guys don't get it. So
I think we had Hogwarts at one point. That was a lot of work.
My husband is working on a Millennium Falcon.
Oh.
I think he's 6 months into this.
It's big, right?
Right. Yeah. He's many months into it. So he's been working on that one.
I just can't keep track of all the little pieces.
Yeah, the bowls and the plates. There you go.
Right. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm so excited about this. I am loving doing these Fiberside Chats and interviewing folks that I want to know all about. So I've been looking forward. I look forward to all of them. And I am really looking forward to this one because I just want to know. You have so much going on. I'm so in awe. And so what I want to start with kind of the structure. So you live on a farm.
I do. I live on a farm in East Tennessee. It's up against the mountains, the Smoky Mountains, kind of halfway between Knoxville and Chattanooga. In a small-ish town, by like small town standards, it's big. We have multiple red lights. But we do say we're going to town. And then when people ask where we're from, we say the next closest big town. We say between Knoxville and Chattanooga. So it's small-ish.
Okay.
By standards, yeah. And it's I have Angora goats and kind of Angora crosses and Shetland sheep, and then an enormous Southdown sheep called, not baby doll Southdown, but like the tank size Southdown. Her name's Betty, and she's a spite sheep I got one day when I was mad at my husband, and she probably weighs 300 pounds, and I was so mad, like I deadlifted her into the back of an SUV and drove her home. And so she's out there too. So there's little bitty adorable Shetlands, and then this like Mack truck of a Southdown with them. So yeah, that's where I am.
And then you do other things. You have bees.
Yeah. So our sheep and goats, the sheep don't reproduce at all because I'm terrified of rams. And the goats, we only breed just very, very limited. And so they're not really like a farm product. They are like deadbeat roommates who don't pay their rent, but chip in for pizza. Like that's the best. And so the bees, for some reason I'm good at bees, and it's not a skill. It's not like I learned a lot. It's just like for some reason it works for me, probably location based. And so we have honeybees, and that's mostly how we pay a lot of our extra goat expenses, mostly our hay bill and things like that, and fencing. So we have bees. We have ducks. They keep down a type of parasite that make goats sick in the South, and things like that. But it's mostly at this point the sheep and the goats and the bees, and then there's fruit trees that we just leave for the deer at this point. Okay. So yeah, we have that.
So I'm curious, this is just kind of a personal question as you were talking about the bees. So we thought about doing bees. I'm allergic, so there's that. But when we started talking about it, I had somebody who wanted to come and do bees on my property, and we didn't go with that, but they wanted to do a bear raiding.
Oh,
you don't know? No. So it's like at what risk you are to having bears come on your property.
Yeah.
At which point I said 0 is too high.
Right. We're not adding that.
No bees. But that's it, so you don't have that
We have bears in the area. We are close enough into town that we don't worry about them too much. And ours, when I started here, I've been here about 7 years. And when we started here, we had little kids, like teeny tiny little things. And we had one of our dogs was extremely young and stupid. And so they would just right in front of the hives. Well, the bees, they're nice. They're lovely, gentle, nice bees. I do not have mean bees, but they fly out and then they'll just, and they'll hit something and they get caught in your hair and things like that. They get upset. So we built a 6 foot, those privacy fences. We knocked it back. It's probably 10 feet in front of their hive and then it goes behind it. But our whole apiary is fenced by those. And so our bees come out and they go up and they're over everybody's head. So for us, our only a real issue gets skunks in the bees more than anything. And we leave those because they also eat yellow jackets. But we don't, the bears, I think even if they came, we'd be kind of too much effort given it's the South. There's food everywhere.
They're looking for an easy meal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So, yeah. All right. Yeah, that was new for me. I hadn't even thought about that. And we haven't seen bears here. They are more likely to be in town. Who knows? But
looking for the easy meal. Exactly.
I guess so. All right. So, okay. So honey, fiber. So when you say that the goats are deadbeat, do they, I scrolled through your feed because I want to make sure I was hitting everything. Right. I saw you shearing them in the house because it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So Angoras you do twice a year.
Right.
And you have one, right? Or two? No, you have a breeding set. You have 3, right?
I have
you had babies too.
7, 8, 10. I guess I have 10 now. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's goat math. It just keeps going.
Right.
So, for those of you who don't know, the Southeast is warm, and then we're up against the mountains, which makes it's a rainforest, so humid and warm. And this year was one of the hottest summers on record for us. So when it came time to do fall shearing, usually we wait a little bit later, but it just kept getting hotter and hotter. And I can't do this to them. So we just brought them in the house one at a time and sheared them in the kitchen. And we do get lots of really lovely fiber. Like it's just, I only breed for fiber and parasite. So none of my animals are show animals. Nothing on this farm should be shown ever, like ever. There's one nice dog. There's one pretty dog, but otherwise, like, not us. So they, they're missing body parts. Like some of them are missing eyes and things like that. So we only breed for nice fiber. So we do have really, really lovely fiber. Okay. And we shear, and I'm not one of those people who keeps like the seconds or anything like that. Like I shear and I keep the most beautiful parts and we do sell fiber and I do process the mohair. I process myself. The Shetlands I send off. There's a Waffavender Illinois wool and fiber mill. She's my mill and I send my Shetland stuff to her and she sends it either back as yarn or roving. And my youngest son, who is now 8, got stuck home with me. He's one of those sandwich kids. He got stuck home with me during the apocalypse. So like he was in preschool and then he kind of just never went back. He went back this year to a part-time program, but he was home with me. It was he and I for years and years and years. It was the longest apocalypse ever. But he became my fiber arts buddy.
Right. So he's making bats, right?
He makes bats. And he's got a great eye for color and he really loves him some sparkle. One of the benefits of not being in the public school system, he has no inhibitions. He finds my lack of sparkle distressing. So he makes bats and he gets to sell his bats and most of the money goes back to the animals and then he gets $3 per bat and things like that. And then I spin. So I got into the animals because I love to spin. And so I spin and I weave. I do not knit or crochet. If my life depended upon it, that'd be over. Like I've tried so many times to learn. That's not my thing. But I do spin and I do weave continuous strand, and now I'm just getting into loom weaving. So they are productive animals.
Okay.
They're just not like, hey, they're rent productive.
Got it. I know how that goes.
Yeah, and we keep them forever. You know, we don't. No one goes. Yeah, occasionally if we do have too many babies, but the older ones, they're here. There's one out there, Marilla, who I think walked the desert with Moses. Like, she is so old, and she just keeps kicking, and I'm like, okay, that's your thing. Let's do
Right.
this.
Right. Right. So lots of animals, and then cats. I see you.
We do. So we foster. I'm shy, and my kids are kind of on a spectrum of shy and, you know, introverted to extroverted and things like that. And I really wanted to teach them to be engaged in their community and be responsible citizens without actually having to engage in their community. So as we've gotten much more comfortable with our shelter family, we've gotten to where we do stuff with them. We did a parade and things like that. But it started out as an opportunity for little kids to give back and to recognize responsibility and being a good community member, and working together. So we started fostering cats, probably I think 5 years ago now. And we do a couple of different things. We'll take moms with little bitty babies in, and then our specialty is what we call spicy cats, which are basically babies who somebody found in their barn, or somebody found under a box, or things like that. And they give them to us, and my kids basically give them little kitty Stockholm syndrome. They just hold them until they're happy. They're like, oh, I actually love humans. And so we have, at this point, 5 years in, we probably had several hundred of these cats make their way through our house. And we have a big cage in the living room, and if you sit and watch a movie, you hold an angry cat. And that's how it works in our house. They're gonna have great stories for their therapists when they get older, I think.
For sure, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. You gotta have fun.
I think, you know, I think saving for college is overrated. Really, we should have just saved for their therapy later on.
Therapy bill, yeah, exactly. There's loans for college. There's not for your bill.
Not for mental health.
Right.
So you post about lots of really fun things that you do with your kids and your family. I'm always curious about how people balance or don't balance work and life and family. And is that intentional? We kind of run by the fly by the seat of your pants method here, but I'm just, with kids, I guess, I don't know, is it intentional, or does it just kind of?
So, I'm not going to quote the right person. I want to say it's Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but somebody was talking about, how do you keep all these balls in the air, right? Have you heard this story? It's a famous, very amazing woman. And they're like, how did you keep all the balls in the air for that long? How did you keep going? And she says, well, I recognize some of the balls are plastic and some of the balls are glass. And I drop the plastic ones if I have to drop something. And that's kind of how we operate around here. We part-time homeschool, so we've got 2 days a week we go to school, and 2 days we're here. And then, we have all these things going on. But as a family, surprisingly, we really prioritize rest and quiet time and boredom. We try to make sure the kids have some time to be bored as often as possible. And we check in and make sure nobody's feeling burnt out and things like that. So even though it does look like we're doing a million things, as a family, we say, hey, we're done. We need to rest, and we will straight up rest. So I try to really hard keep just the glass balls in the air if things are tough, and drop the plastic ones. And then we minimize a lot of the superfluous stuff that I think other people prioritize, and that is their lives. And it doesn't bother me, but we really minimize, the kids are only doing a couple different activities. And we prioritize making sure the animals are healthy and taken care of, and that there's, that kind of triage. You've been in mental health in the past, but It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And we make sure everybody's needs and we're all on the same level, including the animals in the house. And then if that other stuff happens, great. But if it doesn't,
Right.
yeah. So we're really careful about it, but it does look like we're busy, and we are. But I think it's a different busy than other people are.
Right. I love that you said that your kids get to be bored. That's such a gift.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
kids don't know how to be bored and not busy or not, engaged, or that's
yeah,
lovely.
yeah. They whine about it. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I know. Yeah.
But we make sure. Yeah.
I think just being
Mm-hmm.
is such a novel concept these days. So that's lovely. Way to go.
Right.
All right. I want to talk about your bags. They're
Yeah.
amazing.
Right.
Is there, I am the panicked color coordinator thing. I'm so afraid I'm going to make mud, or I'm going to,
Right.
but you put patterns to, like patterned fabrics together. And do you have inspiration? How do you go about,
What is my method?
what's your
So,
method? Yeah.
so I got started with beautiful fabric, and I say that for those of you who don't know me, I got started as what they call a scrapper, and I would take. You've ever seen a woman like, or actually, I shouldn't say woman, and a caregiver straight jacket their baby to themselves with these like meters and meters of gorgeous fabric. Um, and they would do that. They call it love dust and sleepy dust. If you hold your baby like that for years, for many of us, it's full of just magic. And at the end of it, it's really hard to get rid of it. But do you need 7 meters of beautiful fabric? And so what would do is I would scrap those things. I would take these wraps, these different fabrics, and I would make something for the family, whatever, a bag or a keepsake or something like that. And then I would be left with 6 meters of beautiful fabric. So I start empowered by somebody else, a different artist, and then a caregiver who just infiltrated that with just as much love as possible.
Yeah.
So I start with magic. And that makes it easy. That's where I go from there. And then I'll go to fabric stores. My mom is a modern quilter, so she does amazing wild quilts, and she and I will go to stores and we'll hold the wrap scraps up and we'll match and we'll do things like that, and then we come back and I'll get to going from there. But I start with just the most basic beautiful fabric that somebody else created, and so that's what makes it easy for me.
So, and the bags are your own design.
Some of them are. Some of them I've bought patterns, and I don't think there's, aside from the firefly totes, I don't think there's a single one that I haven't modified over the years.
Okay.
But there's a lot of them. There's a couple different designers I like, and I'll buy their patterns as soon as they make them and change them. I do a lot of fiber arts myself, and so a lot of my bags are fiber arts bags. And I changed the functionality of a purse to be a fiber arts bag,
Like a project bag.
Yeah, project
Okay.
bags.
Okay.
Like that. So I modify them. But I'm not ashamed to buy somebody else's pattern. I buy everybody else's embroidery designs. When I got started, all the embroidery designs were cute. That was fine, but that wasn't me. And over the years, the indie designers,
Yeah.
they've done amazing things. I don't have to design anything anymore. I can get online and there's an indie designer who has made the most fabulous runner duck, embroidery design.
Lovely. Yep.
Right. And so I get to support other artists that way.
Yeah.
And
yep. You get to honor the experts. Yeah.
right, exactly. Yep. And not dilute my time. So
Sure. How did you learn? Whoa, what happened?
we're back.
Nope. I just how did you learn about, have you always sewn? Sounds like your mom has skills?
Yeah.
Did you
So I come from a many generations of what are considered to be craftisans, women mostly, probably actually there's quite a few men in there too, who have practiced some sort of craft. And almost all of them have engaged in fiber arts crafts of some sort. So my mom was a quilter. Her mom was an amazing seamstress. She was one of the first. You remember when they had ag extension agents who were called home ec or home ag? She was one of the first one of those. So she would go out and teach all of these different crafts and things like that. She was an amazing seamstress. She could make clothes, and all of her sweaters were too small. I will say that. Every sweater she ever knitted was too small. But everything else she made was amazing. You know, her mother was a quilter. My mom just finished one of her great grandmother's quilts by integrating, you know, the pieces that were left into her own style. She calls it the Camilla and Me quilt. So I come from this, you know, just that culture that we sew, that we do these things, that we engage in the arts and the crafts. I'm very, very privileged in that. And I really started sewing a little bit before my youngest son was born. So about 13 years ago, I started sewing what I would consider semi-professionally. And I've been going ever since.
Right. So do you sew other things besides bags?
Yeah, I do. So I'll do some wallets. I do a lot of mending for people, which I don't mind, but it's like, oh, okay. I do some wallets. I do some different basket styles. I've done in the past what I call, you call it a crazy quilt, where you start with an irregular shape and then you piece around it almost in a log cabin style and things like that. So I've done some things like that. I've played with clothes a little bit, mostly with costuming. And that's a lot of fun. I like doing that. It's like starting from clothes from scratch, as opposed to like, can you replace the zipper? I will replace your zipper for you, but you owe me like a cocktail or something. But otherwise, yeah. So I do a little bit of everything, mostly bags and accessories, and then a little bit of costuming.
Okay. And then you said you do fiber arts, and you said you spin.
I spin, yes.
All right.
Spinning's kind of what I do when I'm with my kids and when I'm teaching them and things like that. There's a lot of my teaching is not teaching, is giving them the tools and then being there with them. And you'll see me do it with my hands. Almost all the time I'm teaching, I'm doing this. So, because otherwise it's like, give it to me, I'll do it. And so when I spin, I'm doing something. So I can't be like, give me that. Let me show you. That kind of stuff. I spin, and then just I try to weave, but that's the thing. That's the plastic ball that gets dropped most of the time.
All right. Okay. So I want to change directions just a little bit.
Right.
So sometime in the last year, you made a post and you talked about, I don't know if you're talking about you or your family, but you used the word neurospicy,
Right.
which I now know is being used out there, but it was the first time that I saw it. And those posts that you make about how your brain works just really resonates with me. So sorry. I felt so seen. It was just really very lovely. And having been, I don't know, maybe in the last year diagnosed with ADHD, which was new and different, and not that I probably didn't know that all along, and was diagnosed because my daughter was, it's been a fascinating journey. But I don't apologize for a lot of things anymore that I used to.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that when I have those conversations, a lot of my fiber arts friends raise their hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm curious about, you know, if there's something about fiber arts that, you know, not that we're all neurospicy, but that draws us to that. You know, I think for me, it's that time when my hands are busy but productive, and my brain can wander without judgment.
Yeah.
No? But I find it really, I'm just curious, you know, what you think about that.
So my background is somewhat in education. I've worked in informal and formal education a long time, and my mom is a Montessori teacher. So I grew up with neurodivergencies being normal and talked about and embraced, and there was no shame in it. We didn't pretend it didn't exist as a family, my entire family. So I'm very unique in Generation X for that because
Ah,
right, it wasn't, I'm old enough to know that there was, it wasn't even real. And so
right.
I grew up in an environment where we talked about these things and they were real. And then I went into education, and I'll tell you scientifically, almost all of these neurodivergencies are neurotransmitter things.
Right.
So for ADHD, it's dopamine and norepinephrine, right? And
Right.
then depression or anxiety is serotonin and oxytocin, right? Well, what releases all of those neurotransmitters? Creating an art, every single one of them. So and particularly if they're craft arts. And so for a lot of them, what we've been doing all our lives, particularly those of us who are older, are self-medicating. We're self-medicating. We're giving
Right.
our brain what it needs, what our world is not providing to us. And so there's the scientific side of it is, yes, absolutely, we're all out there self-medicating, and it's wonderful, particularly when we engage younger kids in it. Or as an educator, we allow kids to knit or to do things in the classroom, which allows their brain to have this kind of hum of dopamine, which allows them to then learn. I mean, straight up, it allows my students to learn if I do that. I will also tell you, from a less scientific standpoint of it, the craftisan part of it, so which involves our fiber arts, but I also tell you woodworking and pottery and all of those things, they have an open end. You're not working towards the thing. You are making a thing. So it's a little bit different than creating fine art, than going in and doing a class on drawing boxes or gourds or whatever it is. It
Right.
has an open end. And almost all of these neurodivergencies, we have a lot of negative reactions, a lot of things where we felt like we failed throughout our lives. And little stuff. I failed to put the toilet paper roll back on, right? Or I failed algebra or whatever it is. So we have this, like, if there is the goal, I've failed all my life. But
Right.
in fiber arts and the craft arts, that doesn't exist. There's not a fail. There's a thing that you're making, and it doesn't necessarily have a standard for perfection. And that allows all of these neurospicy. I like neurospicy because divergent, again, feels like, oh, is that really?
Negative.
And I like spicy. It gives us a little bit of fun with it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So all of these neurospicy people, and they have this opportunity to succeed.
Right.
And so, and it works for any of the crafts. I'm not dissing the fine arts. I think they're wonderful, but I think, even ballet, there is a standard for success.
Right.
But in modern dance, there's not really.
Right.
So your options are different, and that's part of why I love fiber arts. It's part of why I love, my friends who are all engaged in these things, because we're all going through these things and processing these things. And that's kind of why I think we all end up in these areas, is because, it's a different standard and we're self-medicating.
Right. Well, and I think it's a different way of, I approach everything with that curiosity.
Right.
It's an experiment,
Mhm.
and I don't, I used to think I didn't have expectations because I didn't want to fail, but I don't have expectations because I want to take
Right.
that curiosity and take it way over here somewhere,
Right. Right. So you can push it to its edge. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
when you have permission to do that, whether that comes externally or internally, that's very free. Whether you are neurospicy or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be in that category. There's all of these things are beneficial to everybody, really.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's lovely. It's lovely, and I love to be in good company. So I want to know if there's anything else that you want to share with us while we're here. I know that's a big, wide open question.
Right? Oh, wow. Um, oh goodness. I would say on the matter of doing beautiful things and not doing beautiful things. You know, what people see from me and a lot of other people is the beautiful. You know, we are showing the beautiful. And I want people to know that I make ugly things on a regular basis. And, and so if you are out there making ugly things, it's okay to give yourself permission to say that's ugly.
Right.
I made one for my last WAPA show. There's like 3 things in a box, and I was like, nope, no, those are bad colors. They looked pretty, and now they're not. And I think that you know, giving yourself permission to make those things that are ugly, and they're like, yeah, that's what that was. My spinning mentor always says, yarn's not ugly till it's knitted and ugly. And then if it's ugly, it's truly ugly, because I would make some horrendous stuff. And so I kind of want to make sure people understand that it's okay. And it's okay to grieve those things. It's okay to be like, wow, no. Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't have to put a positive spin on it or anything like that.
Right.
It's
Yeah. I
just
was thinking it doesn't even have to be a lesson. It could,
right.
but even if it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, that's an ugly bag, and that's nope, that's a nope, you know. And then giving yourself also permission to throw it away. That was a hard lesson for me, to
That's
be
hard.
like, wow, yeah, right. It is really hard, and
Yeah.
now to the point where throw it away wasn't pretty. So
Right.
but I can't think of anything else. And you know, people are welcome to comment and ask me questions, and
Yeah,
I will
I'm going to
respond.
open it up for questions in just a second. I want to make sure that people know where to find you. Do you
Right.
have a website?
I have a website. It's farmanddesigns.com, and you got to make sure there's the 2 D's. So and designs.com.
Okay.
Probably buy the other one and redirect. But anyway, it's farmanddesigns.com. And I have Facebook, just Annie Morton Designs.
Right.
I have Instagram, same thing. If you look Instagram, Annie Morton Designs. And I have TikTok, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Just but the other 3 are reliable places to find me.
Awesome. Yeah. When it becomes another job, then,
Yeah.
there's so much. All right.
Yeah.
So good. So we know where to find you. Okay. So I would be happy to open things up to questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it in the chat. Actually, there is something in the chat here. Jean says, my son went to Montessori Elementary. The kids could finger knit while listening to new lesson or a story.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
All right. Oh, Anita is in the waiting room, so I'm going to let her in. So if you all have any questions, now would be the time. Annie's on the hot seat.
There you go. And the Montessori thing is I think really important to understanding a little bit of my process and what I do. And you know, my mom, there was a Montessori school, and then we still had a Montessori home. And I to this day, you know, we were talking before the thing, and I said, you know, I may work on my Legos as I do this. Things get quiet, and I was like, you know, this is Montessori. You create yourself a learning place, then you learn how to operate. So my Legos are divided into 2, and if I have to set them to the side, they're tidy and they're ready to go to the next time. And it's really a great way just to kind of raise children and have them, even if they are not neurodivergent, but also neurodivergent children, have them have some tools to make them, you know, their lives easier, make it to the end of the day they're not exhausted, you know.
Right.
And they can create, they can be artists too, you know, in their time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because sometimes it, in my head, and I watch kids, it's so busy in there that I may not have, run a marathon that day, but I'm still exhausted at the end of the day because it was a lot of mental work.
Yep. Yeah, the normal tasks that take, that normal people, I don't know if you're familiar with spoon theory, but it's this idea that you're given a certain number of spoons and you spend them throughout your day. Well, normal people, they don't have to spend quite as many spoons to do something. For me, it was like last night, I'm terribly introverted and I have social anxiety. So last night we went to the parade. I had no spoons. No spoons at home. I needed some spoons and that kind of stuff. But other people that wouldn't have been a big of deal. So one of the biggest things about it is making sure that people have the spoons they need to be creative at the end of the day
Right.
and make things. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that Brene Brown talks about, it's not really a spoon theory, but that thing where she'll come home at the end of the day and she'll say, I got 20%, and she'll have
Yeah.
this conversation, and if it doesn't make 100%, then they work out a plan,
Yeah, exactly.
because sometimes I've got, I don't know, 10 and Toot's got the other 90, and sometimes it doesn't come to 100, and conflict happens then, but then you have a plan. So
Yeah,
communication is,
communicating about it, learning to communicate about it. Yep.
yeah.
That's a
Cheryl,
new
did you have a
word to me.
question?
Yeah, I do. I don't understand what monastery means. That's a new word to me. I've never heard it before.
Okay. So it started out as an education system in, I'm going to get it wrong. I think I'm going to get this wrong, but Europe. It was an education system where Maria Montessori, during the kind of the rise of the middle class, there were all these children who couldn't afford schools or weren't part of the public school system. And Montessori came in and was like, we're going to educate children, and we're going to do it through what they call meaningful work. And they would go and you didn't do math for the sake of math. You would go in and you would learn math in terms of cooking or in terms of knitting or in terms of carpentry. And all of these things you would kind of learn that way. And there's many, many different things she would do. She would do big blocks of learning. So you have 3 hours of learning. You can kind of have breaks, but it's very different from modern public schools that are not Montessori in that there's not 20-minute lessons. There's not a whole bunch of 20-minute lessons. There's one big science lesson or any, things like that. And it was just, she was kind of very holistic and very embracing of children as people, as not as, playthings or as underdeveloped things or as anything like that. She's very much like, these are humans. We speak to them as humans. We teach them as humans. We learn together with them. We allow them to teach themselves. We allow them to teach each other. So it's an education theory. I don't know if you relate, but my mom was a Montessori teacher. So a lot of who I am and where I come from and my background is based on her pedagogy that kind of came into our lives, and I've passed it on to my children as well as I can.
So it's kind of a system theory, but there are also Montessori schools as well.
Yes.
So Montessori system could be taught with other things.
Yes, exactly.
But there are also specific and usually early childhood, or starting with early childhood, because that was kind of a focus too. Let's start here, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Very, very much early education. Almost all of them have early education, and then some of them work their way up further.
Yep.
So that's what I've been doing with my family and myself, and not even realizing that I was doing it.
It makes sense. It is very intuitive. It very much makes sense, particularly if you see your family and see your family members as, there's a lot of people who think of children as something to be molded, something to be created. And if you intuitively look at them and be like, no, this is something, and I'm going to help this something, and we're going to become together, that type of deal. It's very intuitive, particularly for creative people, I think. So,
Last fall there was a young fellow, I would say about 11 or 12 years old, and he and a tutor were at the library, and one of the subjects he was working on was mathematics.
Yeah.
And he fought her all the entire time. He did not want to do mathematics. And I asked him, did he like to play with Legos?
Yep.
And he said, yeah. Well, at that time, the library had a whole bunch of Legos in. And he says, yes. Do you count your Legos? He says, sometimes, depends on how many I need. I have to count them. I says, that's mathematics.
Right.
I says, do you sort them by color? I says, that's color theory.
Yep.
And he thought about it and he thought about it. He says, yeah, it is. I says, mathematics is in everything you do.
Yep.
Nice.
And his teacher
I'm
was
always
in
amazed.
awe that I would explain mathematics to him in such a simple way, and he understood it.
I'm always amazed how much
Yeah.
math there is in farming. Everybody who says, "Oh, I'll never use this again," I use math all day, every day in farming. Like it never ends, and it's geometry, it's algebra, it's basic math. It's all the time. Anybody who says there's, I don't use math. Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, when you make a loaf of bread, you're using mathematics.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm terrible with fractions.
More Legos. You need more Legos in your life. There you go.
Yep.
Right now here we're doing gestation math.
Oh, right. That's a fun math.
Right. Yeah. Especially when the buck has been in the pen all along. So, it's gestation crystal ball math.
Yeah. This is my favorite. This is how far along are you?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Last year was the shearer saying, "Oh, that one's pregnant." Really?
Yeah. Yeah. There's always one of those.
All right. Anyone else have burning questions for Annie?
Nope.
Right. Well, Annie, this was lovely.
I don't have a question. It took me forever to figure out how to turn my unmute and whatnot. But I want to come visit you, Annie. You are just a breath of fresh air. And I love the Montessori connection. I don't live anywhere near you. I'm in Oregon, but this was wonderful to watch and listen to.
Well, we do make it back to see my husband. I actually met in Seattle. We lived in Seattle.
Okay.
I'm not always absent from the Pacific Northwest. So maybe a Fiberfest out there. We'll have to cross paths.
Okay.
You guys have really good Fiberfests.
We do. And it's about an hour and 10 minutes drive for me. It's great. And I met so many waffle vendors at the last one. It was so much fun.
Nice. Yep. That has to happen at some point.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Annie, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
I'm glad you feel that way.
My hope sometime in December is to get these all fixed and set up and posted so that people can do the rewatch, since it happens differently on Zoom than it does on Facebook. But this was so much fun. Thank you all so much for being with us.
No problem. Thank you for interviewing me and doing so well. Let me see if I can. She had trouble with hers. Let's see if I can leave. I hit see the red button. So good night.
All right, guys, have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.